Hi. Hello. I'm Jenni Frase. This is my podcast, Free Failing. I made this podcast as a way to showcase my own low light reel in an attempt to counteract the obscenely curated hellscape of comparison that is social media. So I talk to my own friends about their failures or our failures and things that make us feel weird, and we try to connect about those weird things. Today's episode is less about failure per se, more about a situation that took me by surprise. I think it probably takes other people by surprise as well. Today, we're talking about caring for our aging parents. We're going to chat about their needs, how their personalities change over time, sometimes very quickly, and how these changes bring new challenges for us, and the role reversal that comes with being in the position of making these big decisions. Join me as I talk to my friend Ellie. We have a thoughtful, very deep conversation about caring for our loved ones in their elder years and also what that means for planning for our own future. So, welcome to the reverse parenting episode. The alarming rate at which my parents' needs changed totally blindsided me. And I think it's safe to say also blindsided my guest today, Dr. Ellie Odenheimer. I have known Ellie since the fifth grade. Shout out Stonegate Elementary. Ellie holds a PhD in kinesiology and sports studies from the University of Tennessee and spent years as a professor at SMU and the University of Tennessee before moving to Austin in 2016. Ellie has been an accomplished yoga instructor since 2007 and recently was certified in prenatal yoga. She's an active member of her community, but most importantly, Ellie is one of the most amazing and committed moms, period. Honestly, she's the kind of mom every kid should be lucky enough to have. Ellie lives with her husband and three wonderful littles in Austin, Texas. Ellie, thanks for talking to me today. Welcome
Of
to Free
course.
Failing.
Thank you for having me. That was a lovely intro. Very humbling. Thank you.
Well deserved. How are you today?
Happy and tired.
Yeah.
My life story.
So obviously we talk every day. We're very good friends. We've been friends for a million years. We know each other's ins and outs. And, over the last few years saw each other go through some stuff,
hmm
some stuff with our parents, right? Specifically with my dad and both your parents. So I guess we're just gonna kind of start talking about how you felt challenged, or I guess to play on my word, kind of blindsided by the situation that you maybe found yourself in a little earlier in your life than you expected.
And I think that says it. I don't think that I was ever under the assumption that I wouldn't be caring for my parents in some form or fashion. I just didn't think it would be happening this soon. And when I have spoken to my yoga students that are about my parents' age, they said, "Yeah, you're kind of on the young end for experiencing and going through some of the things you're going through." I saw my mom and her role with her mother change, and my mother in law's role with her parents change, but they were probably in their 60s
Mm,
when it
right.
happened. So for it to happen to me in my 30s with my mom, I'll give context in a minute.
Sure.
I think blindsided is the word. So, with reference to my mom, she started having Parkinson's type symptoms, I want to say in 2010, give or take, but she wasn't responding to Parkinson's medication. The doctors gave her an updated diagnosis in probably 2012, or maybe it was 2014, of multiple system atrophy. I'll probably refer to it generically as MSA. My sister, in a very non medical way, my sister would explain it as a super Parkinson's. So you have all the Parkinson's symptoms, but the patient doesn't respond to Parkinson's medication. And it
Wow.
accelerates where we can and know people that live with Parkinson's for many, many years and their symptoms are controlled. This wasn't the case for my mom. So it's a terminal diagnosis, and the
Right.
average patient with MSA post diagnosis lives for about 5 years. So we knew that what was coming, basically. And and that's what I mean by, like, I wasn't expecting to be changing my kids' diapers the same time and in the same day and in the same hour that I was changing my mother's. And that's
Right.
how I would say, and my dad, and my parents are still married or were still married. My mom passed away in 2019. So he was there too, and would say he was kind of like the manager of her care, but he wasn't doing a lot of the care as time went on. And my mom wasn't really comfortable with him caring for her
That
in
makes
certain
sense.
intimate
That
ways
makes sense. Oh,
anyway.
that makes so much sense.
Um, so that's the part that was blindsiding, that I just thought
Yeah.
we had more time with her, and I
Yeah.
thought the decline wouldn't be as fast, and I thought that the decline would be a lot later in life.
Do you know, but ballpark, you don't have to do the exact math, how old your parents were in 2012? Like, when that diagnosis kinda
They were in their early 60s because
Okay.
basically,
So, wildly young in the yeah,
yeah, kind
for
of
parents,
like
yeah.
my mom definitely retired probably, it was kind of like a, I don't wanna say a forced retirement, but her health was declining, her mobility was declining, so she retired, I think, when she was 64 and my dad was 65.
I see.
So, I think they thought their retirement would also look different, but it wasn't. It was
I'm
basically staying home
sure.
and caring for my mom.
So, you're the oldest of 3. You
Yes.
have a younger sister and then a younger brother, a youngest
Mhm,
brother. So did you find yourself just naturally sort of taking on I know you said your dad was like the actual manager because obviously he lived there, you didn't,
mhm.
you didn't live there full time or anything like that. So did you sort of find yourself also like managing a lot of the care as the like older sibling role?
Interestingly, because of birth order, we tend to fall into some of those patterns. Psychologists have seen that. Over time, that the oldest tends to be a little more in the caretaking role or leadership in the family. However, my sister, because I had 3 kids by that point, by the time she was diagnosed,
Right.
I was dripping in children.
Right.
And my
Yeah.
sister was a little more flexible in terms
Totally.
of bandwidth and work. However, she resides in New York and my parents are
Right.
are in Dallas.
Sure.
So she would come in and if she was between jobs or between, because she's self-employed, because if she was between
Mhm.
contracts, she would come in for few months, 3 months at a time, stay
Oh,
at my
oh,
parents' house and do a lot of work, if you will. So I really think my sister and I supported each other emotionally, but in terms of like being in the thick of it, my sister should have medals for the
yeah,
caring she
right.
did the day to day when she was home with my parents and living there. And kind of like
And
in a lot
yeah.
of ways, putting her life on pause, putting her career on pause at certain points, turning down job opportunities so she could come home and take care of my mom. So I think that she was blindsided too by this role reversal so quickly, so soon in her life. And she did a lot of it and bore a lot of the caretaking.
That's so great. I
Mhm.
mean, that's terrible, and that's great.
Yeah. I am just so thankful for her. I wouldn't
Right, I'm
have,
sure.
just from emotional standpoint, wouldn't have wanted to walk that journey with anybody else but her.
Right, right.
And my brother would do things when we told him to. He wasn't
Right,
totally, he wasn't
sure.
totally absent, but
That
he does
right. Just
tend
less
to
of a
wait.
self-starter.
He
Yeah,
waits until he's asked.
sure, sure.
Mhm.
So in the context of that 7-year span between diagnosis and her passing, how did you see your dad not how did he do? Because I can imagine it's a very emotional roller coaster. Some days are okay, it just depends on how it's going, but did you and or your siblings also find yourself having to support your dad as well, and maybe were a little surprised by the care that he maybe needed, or did that maybe not come until later?
I mean, it definitely came later when he started getting burned out. I think the hard part for me looking back is, or even when he was in the thick of it, we would see him getting burned out. We would see red flags. Not that any of us had done this before, but we would see his like mental emotional struggle with it all. And we would say, we like the three siblings would say, you need more help. You need to
Yeah,
take a break. You need to
yeah.
have, you're not sleeping. Like, I understand that you have a caretaker for some hours during the day, but that's not what you need. Like, you can physically help her eat or get from point A to point B, depending on where she was in her illness. She was still
Right,
mobile for a little while in the beginning and didn't need that intimate care. She could do that herself in the first 5 years of post-diagnosis. But my dad wasn't sleeping because she would have to get up or need help getting up in the
sure.
middle of the night to go to the restroom or whatever. And we're like, you need a caretaker at night. Like, you're sleep deprived. It's like having a newborn. You're getting up every couple of hours. She's tossing her and turning. You're not sleeping. So I'm guessing this is what it's like to have adult children where you tell them what to do and they don't listen to you.
Right, that's how I exactly how I described it with my dad as well. Yeah,
And they have to come to these conclusions. I can
right.
compassionately look back and say, okay, it took them a while to get there. At the time, it was enormously frustrating for Sarah and I to say, you need to do this, you need to do this. And he doesn't listen
Just
to us.
didn't.
Yeah, he had to get to several different breaking points where he would ask for help or get help, whether it be through hospice or palliative care or hiring an aide for my mom. So that was probably, there's normal stuff with parents, right? Like, we help them.
Yeah,
I need my children to help
totally.
me with computer stuff. Like,
Right, totally.
there is
Of
going to
course.
be stuff that
Sure,
I get
sure.
that over time things change, but that part with my dad specifically, he just has to get there himself. And it's going to
Yeah,
continue that way as he ages.
like, currently and moving forward.
Right. Right. I
Right.
mean, we got kind of like, when should an older person stop driving? Usually well
Oh,
before they
boy.
actually stop
Oh, boy. Yes, I could
dri-
also share some stories about that, yes.
driving. I got lucky with my mom. I asked the doctor when she was in the room, and the doctor took her keys
Oh.
away. Not
Oh
physically,
my gosh.
but
Yes.
was
That
the
that is
deliverer
the
of the
way.
message. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, doctors are
Wow.
very stoic and they don't show a whole lot of
I
emotion. And
know.
I said, well, what about driving? And the doctor goes, like, big eyes. You're still driving? Oh, no, no, please, please stop. And, doctors don't usually show that much emotion
That's
and
usually not
surprise.
a not yeah, right.
So,
Sort of the poker face is part of their gig, you know?
yeah, we say that was the day I was cut out in the will because my mom was very upset with me
Was she
for.
really?
Oh, yeah, she was pissed for a long
Yeah.
time
Uh-huh.
because that's
Uh-huh.
in our culture, driving is one of your first gateways to independence. I mean, you can
Yeah,
go somewhere on
right.
your bike, you can go somewhere when you walk, but when your
Yes.
parents, if you are in a position to have
Yes.
a set of keys placed in your hand, there's a lot of freedom with
It's
that.
like the
So,
before that happened and the after that happened from,
yeah,
like, a formative year standpoint.
yes,
Yeah.
and in a point of independence, we are so dependent on our
Yeah.
cars in this country.
Right.
When you are less mobile and it is hard to walk, but you are still driving, you're getting yourself to movie theaters, to the grocery store, to go whatever, your community center, whatever your routine
Yeah.
is at 60, 70, 80 plus years old. The keys are hard. And I imagine will be hard for me. Maybe not because we'll have self-driving cars by that point, but
Let's
for
hope. Let's
yes,
hope.
for the baby boomers and
Yeah.
before them. Did you say you had a struggle with the keys and your dad?
Well, Yes and yes, yes and yes. Just at various points. It was a recurring issue. So,
Mhm.
one of the things I was gonna say that was interesting though about the taking the keys away and how she was like legitimately angry for an extended amount of time is one of the first times my dad was hospitalized. I'm pretty sure it was when he had COVID, so 2020. After he was hospitalized, he had to go to this rehab, like a skilled nursing facility, right? You stay for 2 weeks, whatever, and he kept telling me he really wanted his wallet and his keys. And I was like, "Dad, you can't buy anything or drive anywhere where you are," you know? And he kept telling me that's not the point. Like, I'm an adult, I'm a man, I like to have my wallet and my keys, like, these are my things, like, these are the things that
Mhm.
I always have, and I couldn't really question him about it, but when you said the thing about the independence, it's just like, those were just his security blankets? I don't really
Sure.
know, but the driving thing was a pretty big disaster. So for context, my dad was super healthy, 20-year recovering alcoholic, sober for several decades, and, in 2018, his wife passed away from an accidental overdose, and my dad found her because they were married for 20 years and lived together, and so he never recovered from that trauma, ever. So he immediately started drinking. I could just see him not burning out per se, but when alcoholism addiction, that's like a whole different animal. Like there's
Mhm.
no getting through to somebody who's and frankly, I would share the stories like in classes or forums or whatever. And it's like a lot of people, it was pretty split 50-50. Like, I gotta be honest, Jenny, I'm not sure if I would have stayed on the wagon if I also
Mhm.
like that is a massive trauma. But yeah, he drove all the time. He drove all the
Mhm.
time. He would have little dings in his later years. So he was really healthy. He was 75 and then he passed away in 2022 at 78 and he was just like so healthy. He still went running, like took his dog on
Mhm.
bike ride, but then he just such a fast decline. But yeah, what I had to do in my case is I had to switch gears from and I don't know if maybe you're familiar with this tactic now currently with your dad, but I had to switch gears from parent, like the role
Mhm.
reversal, because I found that if I adopted that role, he would shut down and not I wouldn't be privy to anything then, right?
Mhm.
But if I could flip it around to like his buddy, "Hey, how's everybody down at the bar doing? How's Chuck doing? How's so and so do?" Like I started to
Mhm.
get to know, I would listen to his stories about the regulars and right, so I started to kind of try to get into his world and then he would start to tell me all the really scary stuff that I had
Mhm.
no business knowing, but that it's like he was living like a college kid at
Mhm.
77 or whatever. It was terrifying.
My dad wants to treat me as his buddy, and I wanna be his adult kid. He wants to tell me all the things. He wants to tell me all of his dating escapades and wants dating advice and wants to know why women do XYZ and da 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 da,
Oh
and
dear. Oh dear.
I'm I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
So
right.
I don't. So we'll see. We'll see as time goes on. My dad's driving capabilities are already totally questionable. I don't know if you remember driving with my father growing up, but like my cousin does and tells like the horror stories of being scared in the backseat of the car with my dad, and none of that has changed. So at
Oh,
some
if
point,
anything, it's just gonna get worse,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
I mean,
it's totally getting worse.
totally.
I won't let him drive with me. I'm so controlling.
Is your dad still like taking care of his health in the sense that like he goes to doctor's appointments and things like that?
Yes, he goes to the doctor all the time. He's got a doctor
That's
for
good.
every
Oh,
part of
that's
his
good.
body,
Oh, that's
and
wonderful.
um,
That's so good. That's
so
what I
in
had
that
working
sense,
against me
yes,
in
because your
my
dad wouldn't
sense in
go.
my case was that my dad would not go anywhere
Mhm,
because he knew it was gonna be exactly like what happened in that office with your mom. I was gonna
mhm,
start like, I did have to call his psychiatrist one time because
mhm,
again, he had, like, offered all this information, "This is who my doctor is, this is who my I am seeing this person for this," and, I had to call and, "Hey, there's some pretty rampant alcoholism going on, I'm sure that hasn't been disclosed to you, like, please keep that in mind when you're prescribing," and you know what? My dad was livid when he
mhm,
found that out because of course he found out, and I knew he would, and that was, like That was a long time of, like, anger, and I just kept having to say, "Hey, I don't want you to mix these things that are potentially lethal." So, I kept saying, and I swear I bet this is a parenting term, "I'd rather you be alive than be mad at me."
Right,
Like,
right, yeah.
yeah,
I I'd rather
I said
keep
it
you
backwards.
alive. I'm more worried about keeping you alive than
Yeah, like, "Look, if you're gonna be mad at me, that's great. I'm more concerned with you staying in one piece and in good health and
sure.
all that." I have a lot of second guessing. I guess this is where, like, the failure part of the story comes in. Again, our stories are wildly different, but there's constantly the "could I have done more" thing, like, spiraling around. It's gotten a lot better with therapy and things like that, and I also think that that's really natural, especially for the child of an alcoholic, because there isn't more that you can do, but I had my own grandiose plans for my dad's retirement
Mhm.
that I thought, "Oh my gosh, he's gonna, like, go on a cruise and maybe he'll" I don't know, and he just and I did understand how severe his trauma was and really tried to get him into grief groups, and he went just to, like, placate me for, like, 3 meetings or whatever, but I did or do have a lot of guilt slash second guessing around some of those choices. I'm just wondering if that's something that you feel is relatable, or I know they're totally different situations, but
No, but I mean, there's a lot of overlap. I think that, yes, there is some, what if we had tried XYZ? What did I do, especially like in the beginning, did I do enough research regarding experimental trials, different drugs, integrative or holistic approaches that could have complemented what her neurologists were doing and the
right,
rest of her team? There's also a part of me, and this is maybe just my view regarding terminal illness. There's some people that will fight tooth and nail for a longer lifespan, longevity, whether that be through going to Europe and doing certain procedures and trials over
right,
there that
right.
are not happening here, because I think, I could be wrong, but I think like Europe has a little bit more fast track for drugs and treatments than we do with the FDA. So there's that line of thinking, the holistic approach, bringing in different types of practices and therapies to complement Western medicine. I am more of the adage, and I didn't realize this until I went through or watched my mom go through this illness, is I get longevity, and to me, the only thing I would want for her are medications, treatments, and therapies that would enhance quality of life, not necessarily longevity, because those can be two different things. I just wanted to spend time with her. I wanted to have my focus and my bandwidth around creating memories with her and my children, because, like, by the time I had my third kid, she couldn't even hold him. Like, I
Right.
remember there was another gal on your podcast, Megan. Her mother would hold my son, like, kind of like with my mom, so my mom could feed
Right.
Parker.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, she had
Sweet
like the
image.
shaking and the tremors and the
Totally.
lack of
But
musculature,
just to
really.
still give her that experience
Some
is really
sense
sweet.
of, feeding her
Yeah.
grandchild. I was much more focused on that. My cousin would like send me articles and she's like, "What about this supplement? What was about this?" Which was helpful, but my focus or energy was just trying to really enjoy the time,
Yeah.
trust what her doctors were doing, and trust that I just wanted to focus on being with her. So I think there's some of that. I think maybe that's just natural to be like, oh, to look back and be like, what could have we tweaked? What could it have been a little bit better in the beginning and longer? But with a terminal illness, I
Yeah.
think my focus with her was just much more about being present.
It sounds like you feel peaceful about that, or have some acceptance maybe around
Right.
that, like, that experience with your youngest did happen,
Mhm.
things like that.
Right. And not that we missed a beat, we could have left some stones unturned where there were some medications. Not I don't think anything would have cured her, but
Sure.
again, to make longevity a little more long lasting with her.
Right, because what would you have had to give up for all that research? It's like you could have spent that time as you
Just
did
with her.
being present with her.
Mhm.
Or you could have just completely gotten entirely spun up in the I'm gonna fix it.
Right, and she had, and I guess this could be where some, it's not my experience, but I could see a child, an adult child wanting their parent to fight through something, maybe a diagnosis that could be curable, or I could see wanting your loved one to like fight and do all these different therapies, and the patient or the person that's ill just saying, "I just want to live until
Yep,
my body's done and
that's right.
spend my time doing other things. Not going
That's
to
right.
appointments, not going to checkups, not more testing, more blood draws, more
That's
this, more
right.
that.
Yep.
I just want to live, and when I go, I go."
Yeah, wow, that really hits home because that's exactly how it went. I kept trying, I tried some more. I went through, like, all the stages of grief before my dad even passed away because
Mhm.
he was just so checked out, and my partner was like, "Look, this is what he wants to do." You kinda have to put yourself in their shoes and in their, like, how are they feeling in their body? How do they feel when they wake up? And how do they wanna spend the rest of their days? And my dad was very religious, and he wanted to, just to put it bluntly, he wanted to hurry up and reunite with his deceased wife, you know?
Mhm.
And I think he just decided he was gonna go out in the funnest, I guess, way that he knew how, which had always been before his large stint of sobriety that stayed sober with his
Mhm.
family, was alcohol. So that just became his best friend again. And but yeah, how is this experience or the current experience that you're having with your dad is definitely still with us, aging and trying to be your buddy and asking you questions you have no interest in answering. But how does this make you feel about your own kids and you and your husband getting older? Like, does it make you want to put like every possibility like in the will? If this happens, I want this. And if this happens, I want this. And like, how do you, you know?
I will say, I think that if you've had an aging parent or a parent pass away, it makes you question how you want to, I don't want to say how you want to go out, but
Right.
you do
But
have one
kind
of
of.
two things. I feel like you do one of two things, or maybe this is just our experience with my husband and I. I want to talk about all the options and write them
Yeah.
out. Like, my dad and I say no tubes, like no breathing, like no trachs, like no, like we're no tubes. If we're done, we're done.
Interesting.
And my husband, if you press him on it, like, what are your wishes? He doesn't want to talk about it. He just wants to bury his head in the sand, and he doesn't want to talk about anything. He doesn't want to talk about death. Everything will be fine. We'll live to be 100 years old and everything will be fine. I was
We're
like,
gonna
yeah,
have the
that's what,
technology by then, I don't have to
yeah.
deal with this, that's a
Okay,
problem for later
Pollyanna.
me.
Sure.
Okay.
Or he has the other view of you throw everything in the kitchen sink to keep on going.
Oh,
And so we have different views on kind of how we want to
yeah,
go out or how
like
we want to
the
be
most
cared
different.
for if things are terminal or not looking great. So I do think with a parent that's passed and an aging parent, it made us at least confront these decisions a lot sooner.
Right.
And discussing right to life and how you want to legally, what are your restrictions in your state? And in Texas, it's very different than in other places in the country. And my dad and I have talked about that because my
Do you wanna
mother,
elaborate on that at all?
yeah,
I don't
my
know what those
mother, and
restrictions are.
I don't know enough about options in other states. But for example, my mother was very religious. I don't even know what the terms are, but right to die. I hear about right to die or her assisted. I don't even want to say it's because it's not even called assisted suicide in
It's
states.
not. I don't know what it's called, but it's yeah.
Right. And because I want to use the right terminology, but I don't have it. Let's say that we were in a state or she resided in a state that would allow her to end her life on her own terms. And when she wanted to, she wouldn't go that route anyway because it was up to God when her life was done.
Right.
So it wasn't
Right.
even
I
really
see.
even a discussion. My father does not share her religious views. And he
Right.
would be like, no, you take me to a state. If I have, he has said, this might offend some listeners, but he said, if I have a
Okay.
terminal diagnosis of some sort, no, I want to go to a state where I can end things compassionately and in my own way on my own terms.
Oregon is one of those states, and I think you're
Oregon,
correct in that it is called a right to die, but I'll look
yeah,
it up
maybe
and
Vermont. I mean, who knows? But different countries and different states deal with
right.
death in different ways. So I think the journey with my family has made us talk about things sooner, and it's made me make my husband talk about things sooner and get a will
Right.
and put it
Right.
all in writing.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. I think I would be the over explaining route in my will,
Mhm.
Like, here's my playlist that I want played or whatever, like,
Here are my funeral
um,
arrangements. Here
yes,
are all the
here are the
things.
flowers. Yeah. I do wanna do that thing where not to get dark and just keep it on death, we'll wrap it up here in a second, but I do wanna do, it's basically where you just are re-entered into the earth. I think they just wrap you, but I don't think you're in an actual and then you just naturally
You
decompose into the
decompose,
ground.
or like you're in a wooden
Yeah. So
coffin that
you're
will
like
just.
it's like a nature cycle. So maybe
Mhm.
like because obviously you're not gonna stay there for long. Some hungry coyote or something is gonna come
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like but it's like cycle of life, I guess. I don't know. So
Yeah,
that's one of
sure.
my considerations. I don't really wanna make anybody put my ashes in the ocean because there's just been too many we tried to do that with my dad. It turns out it's not how it looks in the movies. It's actually very difficult, and it's usually windy and messy, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I could see that. I could see that.
It was pretty
That
gross.
could turn out
Anyway,
very poorly.
I mean, it made it funny. It made a really sad moment funny, but it was also a little bit disgusting. So,
Mhm. I live off a dark humor. I'll take all of it.
yeah, I know, and we both do, and that's why even during my dad's passing and your mom's passing, I know there weren't a lot of boundaries there because we couldn't have any because it's such a relief.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry. And crying's fine too, but you're gonna do that anyway, so
Right.
you might as well have some laughter in there
Right.
too.
Agree. Completely agree. All right, well, Ellie, this has been super fun.
Thank you for having me.
Totally. I love talking to you. I can't wait to see you again. Hopefully, I can come to Austin pretty
Soon.
soon. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can support me by rating and following the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or the podcasting platform of your choosing. Until next time, thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Bye.